Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: Turkey moves to counter rising tide of Chinese EV imports. Weekends in Shenzhen, Hong Kong economy hit by neighbors' growing allure. From Hong Kong to Katanning, the church-turned Chinese restaurant telling an Australian success story. On topic, will China's sprawling debt problem worsen? Labor-rich Indonesia aims to send 100,000 workers to aging Japan. Turkey moves to counter rising tide of Chinese EV imports. Bloomberg. Turkey has introduced new regulations requiring companies importing electric vehicles, EVs, to establish at least 140 authorized service stations and open a call center for each brand. The move is believed to be targeting Chinese automakers, which have been successful in selling EVs in Turkey due to their relative affordability. The new rules are set to disrupt the Chinese EV market in the country, with many importers unlikely to be able to meet the requirements by the end of December deadline. Weekends in Shenzhen, Hong Kong economy hit by neighbors' growing allure. Nikkei Asia. Hong Kong residents are flocking to neighboring Shenzhen to shop, dine, and spend weekends following the relaxation of border controls by China. The move is posing a challenge to Hong Kong's economic recovery as small and mid-size enterprises, SMEs, in the city suffer from the imbalance. Shenzhen is making it easier for Hong Kongers to visit, offering online consumption vouchers and kiosks to make currency exchanges easy, while linking Chinese online services WeChat and Alipay with offshore bank accounts. Since cross-border movement resumed in January, Hong Kong residents have made over 48 million trips to Shenzhen, compared with 19.8 million from mainlanders visiting Hong Kong. From Hong Kong to Katanning, the church-turned Chinese restaurant telling an Australian success story. ABC. The Tang family converted an old church in Katanning, Western Australia into a Chinese restaurant called Hung Win's in 1986. The church had been built in 1890, and the idea of turning it into a Chinese restaurant was met with mixed reactions from the community. However, the restaurant became a well-loved establishment over the years, with many locals and tourists visiting to enjoy the food and the historic setting. After more than 30 years of running the business, owner Sammy Tang has decided to move on and hopes someone will take over the church and continue its legacy. On topic, will China's sprawling debt problem worsen? Nikkei Asia. China's housing market turmoil and weak consumer sentiment are impacting the country's economy. Property developer Evergrande is facing a lawsuit that could lead to its liquidation, while Dalian Wanda Group, China's largest mall operator, is selling assets to avoid default. Debt-laden local governments are also struggling. Moody's has downgraded China's credit rating and warned of hidden debt. Evergrande's winding-up petition hearing has been postponed, and pre-sale properties have slumped due to fears over developers' ability to deliver. Real estate prices have fallen, but local governments are reluctant to let them drop further. To solve the property crisis, China needs to address the root causes rather than just treating symptoms. Labor-rich Indonesia aims to send 100,000 workers to aging Japan. Nikkei Asia. Indonesia plans to send 100,000 workers to Japan over the next 5 years to help Tokyo tackle its labor shortage. Indonesia's Ministry of Manpower and the Japan International Cooperation Agency held their first joint Human Resources Forum in Jakarta on November 28. Indonesia has the world's fourth-largest population and is looking to send its citizens to work in the Middle East, Hong Kong, and South Korea. In contrast, Japan's working-age population is falling, threatening a labor shortage. Japan will need about 6.7 million foreign workers in 2040, 4 times as many as it has today. Hong Kong stock slump triggers wave of brokerage closures. Bloomberg. Hong Kong's stock market slump is causing the closure of brokerages and layoffs at Wall Street banks. 30 local brokerages have closed this year, following on from a record 49 in 2022. The Hang Seng Index is on track for its fourth consecutive year of decline, the longest losing streak in its history. The slump is raising concerns about Hong Kong's position as Asia's top international financial center. U.S.-China relationship increasingly driven by their domestic concerns, analyst. South China Morning Post. China's more centralized power structure and changes in U.S. politics are making it difficult for Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden to carry out the agreements they reached last month, according to a report by Evan Medeiros, a senior fellow on foreign policy at the Center for China Analysis. The report states that China sees the U.S. as a long-term strategic and ideological adversary and seeks to minimize cooperation with it. Medeiros also notes that Congress has become a central actor in U.S.-China policymaking, affecting political, economic, diplomatic, and security affairs. Art book banned by Hong Kong jail calls for rules review. SCMP opinion. A Hong Kong court is set to decide whether the ban on a history book featuring Botticelli's Birth of Venus, imposed by prison guards on an opposition activist charged with conspiracy to subvert state power, is justified. The ban has been criticized as absurd, and it is unclear how a book on art history could be deemed obscene due to a single artwork featuring nudity. The case highlights the need for a review of the handling of materials provided to inmates, as well as the importance of respecting the legitimate rights of those in custody. Moody's downgrade provides incentive for Hong Kong to do even better. SCMP opinion. Moody's recent downgrade of Hong Kong's credit outlook from stable to negative is seen as predictable following the agency's downgrade of China's sovereign bonds. The downgrade highlights global concerns about the level of debt in China and the risks associated with the country's fiscal stimulus to support local governments and reverse the property downturn. Moody's also claimed that the introduction of the national security law in Hong Kong has eroded the city's autonomy. Hong Kong officials have hit back, stating that the law is necessary to restore order and that the city has recovered from the riots of 2019. They argue that Hong Kong must maintain an independent judicial system and address external and local challenges to improve its business environment and boost economic integration with mainland China. India, Taiwan stocks draw emerging market investors as China slumps. Nikkei Asia. Investors are turning to emerging markets such as India amid the slowing Chinese market, with the MSCI Emerging Markets ex-China Index up 8% from end October. India's Sensex Index hit a record high last week, with its total market capitalization exceeding $4 trillion for the first time. Investors bet on India's domestic demand growth and its role as a manufacturing hub as companies move their supply chains away from China. Other emerging markets are also attracting investment, with Taiwan receiving $3.2 billion since October and South Korea's Kospi Index rising 10% since end 2021. Soho House shuts to new members following complaints its clubs are too busy. Telegraph. Private members club Soho House is closing its doors to new members in London, New York, and Los Angeles due to overcrowding. Founder Nick Jones said he is working on ensuring the clubs don't feel too busy and will only accept new members in locations with capacity. Soho House has faced criticism that it has accepted too many new members, leading to a loss of exclusivity. The pause on memberships is expected to last until the end of next year. Decoding China: How Agnes Chow Became an Enemy of the State. Deutsche Welle. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee is personally overseeing the investigation into pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow, stating that she will be hunted for life unless she surrenders. Beijing has backed Lee's statement, with a Chinese government spokesperson expressing support for the Hong Kong administration and judiciary in their efforts to apprehend Chow. The pro-democracy activist celebrated her 27th birthday in Toronto, where she has been studying since 2023, and announced on Instagram that she will not be returning to Hong Kong to face criminal proceedings. Chow is facing multiple criminal charges in Hong Kong, including endangering state security and undermining the principle of one country, two systems. This principle was agreed upon when Hong Kong returned to Chinese rule in 1997, and it allows the territory to maintain some autonomy and freedoms for 50 years. Sophie Rice, a China expert, believes that Beijing and Hong Kong authorities were unprepared for Chow's decision not to return and are using her case to intimidate others. Chinese gamer platform operator Tsuwan set for Hong Kong listing via SPAC merger. South China Morning Post. Chinese gamer-centric networking platform Tsuwan Holding is set to go public in Hong Kong through a merger with a special purpose acquisition company, SPAC. Vision Deal HK acquisition, backed by former Alibaba executive Wei Zhe, will acquire 6,286,210 Tsuwan Holding shares for 298 million Hong Kong dollars, $38.1 million. The deal includes a private investment in public equity, PIPE, with 12 corporate investors and individual investors, raising proceeds of 576 million Hong Kong dollars. Tsuwan Holding operates TT Chat, a networking platform for gamers, which reported gross profit of 893.2 million Chinese yuan, $125 million, in H1 2023 and had 13.8 million average monthly active users. China adds NIO, BMW-backed Spotlight to approved car manufacturers list. Reuters. China's industry ministry has added 5 companies to its approved car manufacturers list, including NIO Inc. and BMW-backed Spotlight. This move is part of China's efforts to boost its electric vehicle industry and increase the number of new energy vehicles on the road. The ministry also said it would encourage companies to develop innovative technologies and improve the quality of their products. Europe is no one's vassal, relaxed, she tells EU leaders in Beijing. South China Morning Post. EU leaders have returned from their summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang with a sense that Beijing is taking their concerns seriously. While the two sides remain far apart on core issues such as trade and Russia, the Europeans felt that their concerns were being listened to, and that the Chinese leadership is concerned about economic headwinds and wants to avoid a trade war with the EU. European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen were told that China sees Europe as a pole in its own right, not a vassal of any other power. The EU had several requests for China, including addressing the lopsided trading relationship, stopping Chinese firms from circumventing Russian sanctions, and re-engaging with Ukraine-backed peace talks. While progress was limited, the two sides agreed to work in technical groups to discuss overcapacity and other issues, and she said that China is attentive to concerns about European-made goods being sold to the Russian military. That's all for today's news from the 6 Dimensions. Let's quickly recap the highlights. Turkey has introduced new regulations targeting Chinese electric vehicle (EV) imports, requiring companies to establish service stations and call centers for each brand. This move is expected to disrupt the Chinese EV market in Turkey. Hong Kong residents are flocking to neighboring Shenzhen, causing a challenge to Hong Kong's economic recovery as small and mid-size enterprises suffer from the imbalance. An old church in Western Australia that was converted into a Chinese restaurant has become a well-loved establishment over the years, attracting locals and tourists alike. China's housing market turmoil and weak consumer sentiment are impacting the country's economy, with property developer Evergrande facing potential liquidation and debt-laden local governments struggling. Indonesia plans to send 100,000 workers to Japan over the next 5 years to help Tokyo tackle its labor shortage. Hong Kong's stock market slump is causing the closure of brokerages and layoffs at Wall Street banks, raising concerns about its position as Asia's top international financial center. China's more centralized power structure and changes in U.S. politics are making it difficult for Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden to carry out their agreements. A Hong Kong court is set to decide whether the ban on a history book featuring Botticelli's Birth of Venus, imposed on an opposition activist in prison, is justified, highlighting the need for a review of handling materials provided to inmates. Moody's recent downgrade of Hong Kong's credit outlook from stable to negative is seen as predictable following the agency's downgrade of China's sovereign bonds, raising concerns about China's level of debt and risks associated with its fiscal stimulus. Investors are turning to emerging markets such as India amid the slowing Chinese market, with India's Sensex index hitting a record high and other emerging markets attracting investment. Private Members Club Soho House is closing its doors to new members in certain locations due to overcrowding, aiming to maintain exclusivity. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee is overseeing the investigation into pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow, who has announced she will not be returning to Hong Kong to face criminal proceedings. Chinese gamer-centric networking platform Suwan Holding is set to go public in Hong Kong through a merger with a special purpose acquisition company, SPAC. China's industry ministry has added 5 companies to its approved car manufacturers list, including NIO Inc. and BMW-backed Spotlight, to boost the country's electric vehicle industry. EU leaders felt that Beijing is taking their concerns seriously, with China seeing Europe as a pole in its own right and not a vassal of any other power. Now, let's dive deeper into the news. The move by Turkey to introduce new regulations targeting Chinese EV imports is an interesting development. It shows that Turkey is trying to protect its own EV market and create a level playing field for local and foreign automakers. While this may disrupt the Chinese EV market in Turkey, it also presents an opportunity for other foreign automakers to increase their market share. The increasing allure of Shenzhen for Hong Kong residents is causing a challenge for Hong Kong's economic recovery. As more people choose to spend their weekends in Shenzhen, Hong Kong's small and mid-size enterprises are suffering from the imbalance. This highlights the need for Hong Kong to find ways to attract residents and tourists back to the city and boost its own economy. The story of the church-turned-Chinese restaurant in Australia is a heartwarming one. It shows how a unique idea can create a successful and beloved establishment. It also highlights the importance of preserving historic buildings and finding creative ways to repurpose them. China's housing market turmoil and weak consumer sentiment are major concerns for the country's economy. The potential liquidation of property developer Evergrande and the struggles of debt-laden local governments are indicators of the challenges China is facing. To address the property crisis, China needs to address the root causes rather than just treating the symptoms. Indonesia's plan to send workers to Japan is a win-win situation for both countries. Japan is facing a labor shortage, while Indonesia has a labor-rich population. This partnership can help alleviate Japan's labor shortage while providing job opportunities for Indonesian workers. The closure of brokerages and layoffs at Wall Street banks in Hong Kong due to the stock market slump is a concerning development. It raises questions about the future of Hong Kong as Asia's top international financial center and the impact of the stock market on the city's economy. The evolving relationship between China and the U.S. is becoming increasingly driven by their domestic concerns. This makes it difficult for both countries to carry out the agreements they reached, as their focus is primarily on their own interests. It underscores the challenges of finding common ground and cooperation between the two powers. The ban on a history book featuring Botticelli's artwork in a Hong Kong jail raises questions about the handling of materials provided to inmates and the importance of respecting the rights of those in custody. It highlights the need for a review of the prison system and the treatment of prisoners. Moody's recent downgrade of Hong Kong's credit outlook is not surprising given the agency's downgrade of China's sovereign bonds. It underscores the concerns about China's level of debt and the risks associated with its fiscal stimulus. Hong Kong officials need to address these concerns and work towards improving the city's business environment to boost economic integration with mainland China. The increasing investment in emerging markets such as India and Taiwan amid the slowing Chinese market shows the shifting dynamics in the global economy. Investors are looking for opportunities outside of China and betting on the growth potential of these markets. This highlights the need for countries to attract investment and create favorable conditions for businesses. Soho House's decision to close its doors to new members in certain locations reflects the challenges of maintaining exclusivity while also meeting the demands of a growing membership. It will be interesting to see how Soho House manages its membership in the future and balances exclusivity with accessibility. The case of pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow and the response from Hong Kong and Chinese authorities highlight the ongoing tensions between the two sides. It also raises questions about the principles of one country, two systems and the autonomy of Hong Kong. This case serves as a reminder of the challenges faced by activists and the importance of upholding human rights. The upcoming public listing of Chinese gamer-centric networking platform Suwan Holding highlights the strong growth potential of the gaming industry in China. It also shows the increasing interest in SPAC mergers as a way for Chinese companies to go public. This trend is likely to continue as more Chinese companies seek opportunities to access capital markets. China's addition of NIO Inc. and BMW-backed Spotlight to its approved car manufacturers list is part of its efforts to boost its electric vehicle industry. This move shows that China is committed to increasing the number of new energy vehicles on the road and promoting innovation in the industry. The European Union summit with Chinese leaders and the sense that Beijing is taking their concerns seriously is a positive development. It shows that there is potential for dialogue and cooperation between the EU and China, despite their differences. It also highlights the importance of addressing trade imbalances and other key issues to build a stronger relationship. That's all for today's news from the 6 Dimensions. What are your thoughts on these developments? Do you have any questions? Let's hear your ideas. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.